Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Here, please rise for the pledge and remarks by Councilman Palermo.
I just want to say welcome everyone that's here. It's Tuesday. Let's get to work.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of legislative chambers.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Omaha City Council. We appreciate your attendance here today. We look forward to your input on our many items on the agenda today. And if you would, please turn your cell phones off. Madam Clerk.
Item 6, a resolution to approve the Industrial on Fort Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 1215 Fort Street in an amount up to $1,227,069.
Public hearing and vote on number 6 is today. Proponents, please. Ms. Hadley.
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley, City Planning. Just kind of waiting for this to warm up, I guess. There we go. All right. So before you is a Tiff redevelopment project plan for a redevelopment site in the Airport Business Park area. This is also an extremely blighted area, so this is a 20-year Tiff term. And what you see highlighted here in yellow is the redevelopment site. This is 13th Street. This is Fort Street. And then going north would be going toward Abbott Drive and Stores Parkway. So this is a single vacant parcel of about 4.1 acres. The project is proposing to build 66,000 square foot industrial building that would have 14 leasable bays. And the idea is it would be for flex space for small businesses that need storage in industrial space. So like a lawn care business or maybe even like a painting contractor. There will be access from the Fort Street. The developer is here. It's JEH Enterprises LLC, and that is Josh Hannum, the manager. The total project cost is about $6.3 million, and the amount of the TIF request is about $1.2 million plus capitalized interest. That represents about 19% of the total project cost. We're also looking at an additional up to $300,000 that may be available once the TIF is paid off to help be used to offset future public improvements in the vicinity and including improvements to 13th Street. With that, I will ask for your approval, but let me show you, let's give you a few more visuals. So this is the 13th Street. This is the redevelopment site, 13th Street. This is a different aerial vision. Here is the site layout, so 13th Street again. Won't go any further. Fort Street here, 13th Street. So again, access from Fort Street. And then here are some renderings or elevations. And this is the most current. So this would be Fort Street. And then here's another rendering. So with that, I would ask for your approval.
Thank you. Other proponents, please.
Council President, Council Members, Jessica Thomas, 10250 Regency Circle, here on behalf of the applicant. As Bridget mentioned, we are proposing to construct approximately 66,000 square foot industrial flex space Very excited about this project. It's really an opportunity to bring to a vacant lot a new building, which is intended to bring multiple job opportunities to the site. As Bridget mentioned, you can see here, there's intended to be 14 bay sites. We've anticipated there being approximately 3 employees in each of these sites. Really, the intent there being an opportunity for people like plumbers, electricians, people that own lawn services that are otherwise working for folks now to take their businesses, go to a site that's a smaller location, and then really start to hire their own people. So I've always thought of it as kind of like the Mastercraft building for industrial users and people. So the project costs originally were anticipated to be around $6.5 million. We've requested approximately $1.2 million in TIF for the site. Those funds will be used for the public improvements around the site. The developer has talked to the neighbors. As you can see, probably more so on this image here, there's a landscaping piece that runs along here, and that really is intended to create a landscaping berm because there are residents that are on 13th Street right there, and that intent is really to make it so that the residents aren't, overcome or overwhelmed by the project site. So those have been really great discussions there. The developer is here to answer any questions you may have, as well as I.
Thank you. Any other proponents that want to speak today? Seeing none, any opponents?
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. I, in general, am against this one specifically, but also all TIF things because I don't think there's enough transparency. $1,200,000 and some $1,000 to include acquisition, the city's participation. These things need to be explained in plain language for the citizens because it sounds like the city is going to buy it, acquire it, demolish it, prepare it, all this other stuff. All being said that it will not raise our taxes, and I don't think that that's true. One way or another, it has to affect taxes. So I'm against it until it gets further discussion, along with discussion of why certain things have disappeared now and not being worked on. Specifically Crossroads. Some things have been pulled off the agenda and the
So
work
Larry,
stopped.
you're doing well until now. You can't,
Thank you.
You can't wander off the topic.
Thank you. I will not argue with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents today that want to speak on number 6? Seeing none, public hearings closed. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Helm? Hi,
Hi there, Josh Hannum, 1410 North Saddle Creek.
thank you. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Can you give a broad overview on what you're planning to accomplish here? How the economic opportunities for that particular area might be, or what type of forecast that you have in your vision that will bring obviously a significant growth to the District 2 area?
Yeah, so my intentions here and my vision is to move our A United office and workshop from the North Saddle Creek corridor over to here to kind of stimulate the growth of this particular building. We'll take up roughly 5 of those 14 bays. And then with that, through my network of construction companies and other service-based companies, we're going to market this particular building to them because it has a unique access to Storrs Expressway and Abbott, the airport, and I feel that the North Omaha corridor with these type of roads is a good place to be for service companies like myself. And so that's the intent, is to market these bays to them and to bring them to North Omaha to fill the space up.
So if we have companies in North Omaha, like for example, I've been approached by a number of individuals that they're looking for bays or opportunities to have a business storefront like you're creating here. What would be the opportunity for them to yield that, to get that opportunity to be in your space?
Well, just like any other investment property that we own, we would have to go through the normal leasing process with them. And with the type of landlord that I've always been, is I've always worked real closely with any of my tenants on how to get into a space, what it's going to take to build it out so that they can use it to its fullest, the lease agreements, all of that. So we would start with that conversation, and they're welcome to have that conversation with me to get started on the process, and then we would find a way to get them in there.
So how soon will you begin the application process to fill the 5 bays?
Well, it's right now actually. So we do not currently have a real estate agent actually pursuing leases. I've had several ask me to do that, but right now I kind of want it to be more organic, to make sure that we are advertising to the neighborhood and the surrounding area, and not just all of Omaha and maybe outside of Omaha. We'd like to see local people get in here.
Great, so that's great. So if I were to tell constituents in District 2, where might they find your advertisement about this great, exciting opportunity?
Well, I don't have any advertisements out right now, but if you have my email address, josh@aunitedglass.com.
Okay.
They can send me an email, and we can get the process started that way.
Okay. And are you still willing to discuss more information about how this is going to be an economic growth opportunity for District 2 and the city of Omaha?
Yeah, I'm always open for that discussion.
Okay. All right. This sounds like a great opportunity. I do welcome you to the area. You're already there. I know that. Just for the record, this is a TIF application that we're talking about. I know that I've asked a lot of other questions, but just want to kind of capitalize what we're doing here today, because in North Omaha, more importantly, there's been little to no activity for a long time. And of course, we're so excited about these opportunities that are coming our way now. But we also want to educate that community and let them know what a fantastic opportunity this will be to the area.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bagley. You're recognized.
Mr. President. Good afternoon, Josh. Reading the 34 pages, so there's going to be 42 permanent full-time jobs, is that correct?
That's our estimation, yeah. 3 permanent jobs per bay.
Okay. And I know the Omaha Public Power District, Omaha Center is just to the east of that, and knowing that area, working for years in my job at OPPD, the old St. Teresa's Church is kind of down by there, and I think the Carter Lake City had a yard that's, I think, right behind this. City of Omaha, when I worked summers in the mid-'80s, we had a yard there. So I know, and knowing the lay of the land of that area from the years, I think it's a beautiful building there, and a good economic shot in the arm for that part of town. So I'm glad to support that today, and appreciate you being here and for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
I do want Bridget Hadley to come up. We talked a little bit about the fact that in pre-council that I would entertain the notion of having a briefing, since that was overlooked prior to this. Just want to reiterate that agreement that we were going to do that, and I'll go ahead and move that we approve this resolution. Thank you.
Yes, if I could just add that I did go back and look, because I do remember you wanted to make sure that we did outreach to the applicants, to make sure that or contact them to make sure that they contacted you. And I did see an email from Don to Josh Hannum, where he did send him an email to say, make sure you reach out to Councilmember Johnson. And Josh did respond that he had definitely tried via email a couple of times. So that did actually occur, but I apologize if it didn't happen fast enough.
Let me be clear. I'm saying from the city planning perspective, no briefing was done.
Okay, and I guess I'll defer to my director on that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that motion. And I'll just add that you don't have to get up or anything, but this actually transfers a successful business out of District 1 into District 2. But I'm very supportive of this new development here and what it's going to accomplish, and working directly with Mr. Hannum on our North Saddle Creek Business District ideas that have big plans for his current site. So I think it's a win-win and all very positive. There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Bagley.
Aye.
Harding. Johnson.
Yes.
Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 6 is approved, 7-0. Item 7, to consider a Class C liquor license for Lemon Drop Lounge located at 5423 South 36th Street.
Public hearing and vote on number 7 is today. Proponents, please. Do we have someone with the Lemon Drop Lounge here? So we frequently do require a manager to be here unless there's an endorsement by a city council member. Mr. Palermo, is your light on?
Can I ask, thank you, Mr. President. Can I ask the clerk how much time's left on this one?
It's a recommendation is due back to the Liquor Control Commission on September 12th.
Okay. I'm gonna request this be laid over 1 week.
Motion a second to lay over. I did not close the public hearing, did I? Okay. Public hearing and vote will be laid over for 1 week. Roll call.
Bagley.
Aye.
Harding. Johnson.
Yes.
Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 8, to consider a Class I liquor license for Sicky's Garage Burgers and Brews located at 701 North 102nd Street.
Public hearing and vote on number 8 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon. My name is William Bierman. I'm the attorney for Sicky's ND Inc., doing business as Sicky's Garage Burgers and Brews. Here's a proponent, obviously. Happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Thank you. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 8 is approved, 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Consent agenda. Any member of the city council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the city council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the city council rules of order.
Public hearing on agenda items number 9 and 10 were held on August 16th. No further lights. Is there a motion? Motion and a second. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson.
I'm sorry.
Order.
You want to clarify your request?
This is action item number 9, is that correct?
Yeah.
And
It's 9 and 10.
9 and 10. And what district is this in?
So we're currently voting on number 9 and 10.
And I'm asking for point of order regarding if this is in District 2.
Questions can't be asked during roll call.
Yeah. I think, Mr. Kuzi, if you could clarify, I believe we're at a point where questions cannot be asked. It's a roll call vote.
Matt Kuzi Law Department, once voting has begun, there can be no discussion other than to ask what agenda items are being voted on. I believe the clerk concurs.
And Matt Kuzi, could you please clarify to this audience that it is customary when there is items on the agenda and they are in a specific district in which the representative is present here on this council, that it is customary for them to make the move or make the motion to approve the resolution.
Matt Kuzi Law Department, that may be the custom or tradition, but it is not reflected in the City Council's adopted rules.
So when we continue to do that and others are allowed to ignore the request of that representative, and although they have not been voted by the citizens of that particular district to speak on that, to represent for that district, we will continue to allow that to happen. Because if that's the case, then when things are happening on South Omaha or things are happening out west, then it is my responsibility to vote yay, nay, and do all kinds of things, although I wasn't voted on as a representative to speak for that community. So now that we have that on the record, then we now know that we will now exercise that right going forward. If there are items that are out west that as City Council, District 2, I have the privilege to either vote that up or down as my counterparts continue to speak on District 2's behalf as though they were voted in office to speak on their behalf. Thank you.
Okay. It is your vote. Madam Clerk, if you want to resume the voting?
I'm just going to start it over. Bagley.
Aye.
Harding. Johnson.
Yes.
Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
The public hearings on agenda items number 11 through 22 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, and who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. Yes. Items 11 through 22.
Good afternoon. Nick Korth, General Manager, Omaha Tap House. Number 11, I am a proponent.
Great. Thank you. Did you provide your address too? I didn't catch that.
1403 Farnham Street.
Great. Thank you. And here to answer questions. Thanks. Any other testifiers on 11 through 22? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
Todd Fitzer. I had a couple of questions. I apologize. I meant to ask these at pre-council today, but on item number 16, there are a number of speed limits that are being adjusted on certain roads, and I was just a little unclear on the ones where it says rescinded. What goes in place of what was rescinded?
Todd Fitzer, Public Works. There used to be cases where there were separate speed limits for trucks and cars. So this was brought to my attention by Councilman Rowe, had to ask a question out on Industrial Road, so we did some investigation because I didn't know the history of it. When it was a state highway, they used to post for different speed limits for trucks and cars. So we did some investigation with the Nebraska Department of Transportation, find out why they did that. You know, is there a good reason that it's still in place? Could it be changed? They came back and indicated that it is the city's jurisdiction, and their support, and we have documentation of that, is that the speed limits be made uniform for all vehicles. What we learned over the years is that the differential in speed between trucks and cars is actually causing as much of an issue as we hoped at one point that it would solve. So what the City Public Works Department did is went through our speed limit list, and every case where those were different, we are rescinding and going back to one speed limit. That's the purpose of what's.
And it looks like the default speed limit, if you will, is that which is for cars, because the ones that were rescinded were only for the truck limits.
That's
correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. I was just curious if Mr. Rakes or Mr. Thulkin are available today. Are they on Zoom or?
They are not on Zoom. I don't believe they're here. Ms. Sanders is here, I guess.
Is this not working? Or? That means nobody's on, okay.
Deb Sander, Human Resources.
Okay.
And your question was?
Are either one of those nominees here today or available by Zoom?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you. I think I have my question answered. I'll move to approve.
Motion and a second. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Point of clarification, when we have appointments to these committee, is it customary for us to have the person in attendance so that we can at least ask them questions if we should have them?
Tiff Sander, Human Resources. They've not been in attendance before. The recommendation comes from the mayor's office and is placed on the agenda.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
We've not had them come to the meetings. They've been placed on the agenda by the mayor's office, and so they're placed on the agenda and then they're voted on.
So how do we get to recognize who these individuals are that are being appointed? I could meet them in the street and not know them.
Their applications are attached to the agenda, so that's the information that is provided by these individuals. Both of the individuals that are on the agenda are current members of the Personnel Board. Mr. Tolkien is the regular member on the board, appointed in August of 2017, and then Mr. Rikus is an alternate member, also appointed in August of 2017.
Right. Unfortunately, those applications, they do not include a picture. And I guess I would feel a little bit more comfortable if I would have the opportunity to at least meet them and talk to them and be given the opportunity to ask questions should I have them. I kind of feel like I'm being robbed of that responsibility now. That's just how I feel about it. And I'm sure constituents feel the same way. They should have the opportunity to see who will be representing them, especially on the Personnel Board. In the future, can we make sure that appointees are at least here in attendance so that if we as city council persons have questions and if any constituents have any questions, that we're able to ask them those questions, please?
Sure, I will make that request, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Deb, this isn't directed towards you because I know you didn't make these appointments, but I do want to say that a few weeks back with appointments that came before us, I personally don't care what the person looks like or what they believe in. For me, it's going to be if they're appointed to a board by the mayor on if they show up and if they do the work for the city, because that's the biggest issue. And thanks to my staff, knowing that I would base these appointments on that moving forward, I can tell people what I gathered with their worker looking into this. And agenda item number 20, he's never had an absence when called to serve. And 21, Tim, he's only had one absence in 5 years. So for me, that's what I need to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say too, as Ms. Sander pointed out, that the exhibits that are attached to our agenda have the basically the vitae or resume of the individual applicants with phone numbers, and we could certainly pick up the phone and call them if we have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bagley.
Thanks, Mr. President. One last thing, Deb, I don't have any more questions for you, thanks, but I did want to make that point that I think it's important. It's not in any way, shape, or form being critical, these two reappointments, but it was to recognize the importance of a personnel board. You're talking about the livelihoods of people that work for the city. And again, I know there, as Councilman Palermo recognized it, their work is appreciated. And I wanted to say that in person, and I know we've had conversations in the past where, at least I feel strongly about, I think several on the council do, that these appointments are important, especially the personnel board, because we've had terminations. A lot of these employees have union representation. It's just important. I just was hoping they'd be on the Zoom, but I'm hoping in the future that if people are nominated, I didn't have anything to say other than thanks for their service, because they don't get paid for it. It's public service, and I'm glad to hear that their attendance is true to their commitment of public service in that. So that's just why I wanted to make sure that that was understood. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Hi, I just want to also echo my sentiments as we discussed 2-3 weeks ago regarding the importance and the commitment of the City of Omaha to make sure that we are getting committees that are made up of a diverse group. So when I talk about the application missing a photo, that would give me some type of glimpse as to what their makeup is in terms of fulfilling that diverse group. In addition to that, them being present would also help into determining that. If I believe, and I believe the citizens of Omaha believe, that a diverse group of people in all of these committees that we are so passionately filling, that they should reflect the citizens in which are served in Omaha, Nebraska. Citizens in Omaha, Nebraska are made up of all different cultures, all different backgrounds, all different races, all of that. And certainly we can do a better job at making sure our committees reflect that. And when we're talking about a personnel board, one that will be faced with analyzing complaints of discrimination, that will arm that group, more importantly than any other group, of the necessary tools to determine whether or not the complaint is valid or not. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second on items 11 to 22. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 23, an ordinance to approve an interlocal agreement to allow the Douglas County Sheriff's Office access to the City of Omaha's traffic light poles to install equipment for automatic license plate detection.
The vote on number 23 is today. There's been a request to withdraw from the applicant. Motion and a second to withdraw. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Items 24 through 29 are ordinances for the 2022 Charter Convention. Communications are listed on the agenda. Item 24, an ordinance proposing an amendment to Section 2.06 of the Home Rule Charter to provide that a council member who is vacating a city council position cannot vote for the council member's replacement.
The vote on number 24 is today. I don't see any lights. Is there a motion? There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 24 is approved 7-0. Item 25, an ordinance proposing an amendment to Section 2.07 of the Home Rule Charter to change the process for determining if a mayor is disabled and unable to perform the mayor's duties.
The vote on number 25 is today. Mr. Palermo, your light's on.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was hoping we would take this at the end, but that's fine. We will talk about it right now. So originally, this section 2.07, I believe, would cover all of what the honorable members of the Charter Convention brought forward to us. And a part of this we heard loud and clear about, and it was a part that was taken out. I mean, it's been talked about on the news, on the radio, in the paper, and that was the part about the mayor being gone a certain number of days. And I've had enough conversations with the mayor to know what's important to her, and she certainly made it clear to me that she really wanted this part of this these original ordinances moving forward. And if you think there wasn't a lot of conversation about it, well, to be honest, my colleagues did find out about this afternoon as I moved forward to work on the amendment of the whole, but things changed around here quickly, and the Charter Convention members met for many, many weeks, and they had many, many opportunities of public input. And shortly after that gathering, we heard loud and clear from them about what they wanted and what they didn't want. And obviously the things presented to us were, I believe, unanimous. And so I'm gonna make a motion for the amendment of the whole. And I wanna make sure I get this right with law before anybody else chimes in, that it would be amendment of the whole section 2.07, to move forward with that?
Matt Kuzi Law Department, that is correct.
Okay.
And the clerk is nodding her head that she agrees with me as well. It's an amendment of the whole to agenda item number 25 to further amend section 2.07 of the Home Rule Charter.
Okay, good. I'm glad I have both of you in agreement with me. That's nice. That's rare. So anyway, I know how important this is. We have certainly heard, at least I have, so I have to believe my colleagues have heard loud and clear from their constituents, from citizens of Omaha on how they felt about this. And I know positively that the mayor wanted this to be discussed. So I will entertain maybe some rebuttal if I need to. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And just for clarity purposes, do you want to just give a quick review of what 25A, the amendment of the whole, contains?
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Kuzi, this is the exact question. Maybe if I could have, Bernard Indabash with law come down. And I think Bernard, being heavily involved in the participation of the Charter Convention, could certainly tell us about the unanimous support about bringing this forward, and then briefly outline what 2.07 is.
Certainly. So what you have before you, the amendment of the whole, basically goes back and encapsulates is exactly what the Charter Convention recommended as far as changes to 2.07. That was basically in two parts. The first part changed the provision for when the city council president acts as acting mayor from what existed in the past, which is when the mayor leaves the city limits, to now providing that if the mayor is absent for a period of more than 5 business days, so any stay shorter, 5 business days or shorter, the city council president does not act as mayor. And then there are some caveats in there as well. If the mayor asks, if the mayor's disabled, and there's also a period of time, if there's some emergency situation, then the city council, and the mayor can't be reached for a period of time or for an hour, then the city council, or 2 hours, I'm sorry, then the city council president would act as mayor. That particular change was not in the change that was asked by the legislative committee to finalize into ordinance form. The change to 2.07B, which changed the process for the mayor being disabled from one that relied on medical doctors, to one that was based on the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, was moved forward by the legislative committee. So what you have in the amendment is actually the recommendation that was made by the Charter Convention, and it was made unanimously. And it differs from what you had previously by adding the language about the acting mayor. The disability portion is exactly the same, and hopefully I was clear in my description.
I feel you were very clear. Is it still my light, Mr. President? Okay, thank you. Sorry. So let me ask you a couple questions if I could, Bernard.
Sure.
So almost verbatim, this is word for word what was presented to us, unanimous decision. I do recall some of the emails. I want to make clear to people, because it was overwhelmingly in support in the way I'm going to vote. But the way it is currently, if the mayor's gone and Council President Festerson fills in, does he change offices? Does he get to move up to the 3rd floor and have the mayor's office?
No. Traditionally, the acting mayor doesn't move into the mayor's office. The acting mayor is there are some duties that the acting mayor will perform in the absence of the mayor, signing documents and doing other action. But as far as physically changing their location, it's my understanding that has not occurred.
Okay. Is there a change in pay from president to mayor?
There is a difference in pay between the two of them, but when somebody is acting mayor, there is no additional compensation that's received.
Would the acting mayor, being the council president, whoever that is, would they be given a city vehicle with city security?
Yeah, and I want to make clear, I'll have to double check on the wage. I don't think there is an additional page, but it wasn't something I necessarily looked at. There isn't anything And I apologize. The mayor receives, president receives, normally receives compensation above that of the council members. I think you'd receive a 20% premium for being president of city council, but you don't receive anything in addition for being acting mayor. In regards to having a vehicle or security, there isn't anything, frankly, in the charter or the code that entitles one to vehicle or security. Currently, the mayor does receive those things. It's my understanding that the acting mayor has traditionally not received those things, but obviously if there was some circumstance that dictated that the acting mayor was in need of security, I'm sure that the police department would provide that to be fair.
And to be fair, those were
Yeah.
softballs. Those are to clarify that.
Absolutely, understand.
There is no difference when somebody is acting in the capacity of the mayor. And I also realize that we live in a technology age, but I also am aware that I can drive around the city and sometimes I don't have cell phone service. So I can only imagine when you're gone away from the city. So there really isn't a lot different to the process of what happens now, other than the amendment of the whole, except for the number of days and maybe the documentation or what's required of who would have to be notified for that. And again, I'm bringing this forward because I heard loud and clear from the mayor that she wanted this on there, and she was upset because of the decision that the charter convention members made that it was not on there. And I believe there's going to be changes to some of these ordinances that we're going to vote on here moving forward. So that's why I brought about the change today. Thank you, Bernard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Ms. Milton, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I just want to say that all of the charter recommendations, but for one where we're doing an ordinance or we were able to do policy change, we're going to go on one of the 3 ballots, either this one, spring of 24 or fall of 24. I don't have any problem. We were just trying to pick certain numbers that were going on this ballot in November so that we didn't put all 24 on one ballot for voter fatigue. So this doesn't give me any heartburn because I support putting them all on the ballot at some point. So, I mean, I have no problem with that. That's, the legislative committee did not make a vote to not put this on a ballot. It was just, what are we going to prioritize at what time? And I think it was just based upon the feedback that we got. We thought it might be good to give the people a little more time to decipher it and figure out what it meant. And Councilmember Palermo, I think the wording that was used here, it's appropriate, it explains it. And if your desire to vote on it and put it on this ballot with the other provision, I support that as well. And I understand it was one of the mayor's priorities for this charter convention, which is why it was my intention to put it on spring of 24, but I have no problem supporting this to put it on this ballot. So I appreciate your efforts in putting this forward today. Nothing further.
Thank you. I can't tell if there's another light on. I don't see another light. There has been a motion, but no second, I believe. There's a motion and a second to approve the amendment of the whole. Roll call. Oh, go ahead.
Is this a floor amendment?
It's the floor amendment I made, moving the amendment of the whole,
Understood, thank you.
not what was originally on there.
Okay.
Not unless called upon. I don't think I see any further lights. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
No.
Rowe. Mr. President.
No.
Motion passed 4-3. Item 26, an ordinance proposing amendments to sections 2.08, 2.10, and 2.18 of the Home Rule Charter to provide for a line of succession in the event the council president and the council vice president are unable to perform as acting mayor, to provide an exception to the requirement that the city council must meet at least twice a month in the event of emergency declared by state or federal government, and to require that publication related to any initiative petition be made only in the city's designated official newspaper.
The vote on number 26 is today. I don't see any lights. Is there a motion? I'll second. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 26 is approved, 7-0. Item 27, an ordinance proposing amendments to sections 5.03, 5.16, and 5.17 of the Home Rule Charter to allow for an increase in the size of cash reserve fund from 8% to 12% and to increase the monetary amount, which requires public bidding and city council action from $20,000 to $50,000.
The vote on number 27 is today. I don't see any lights. Is there a roll call? Is there a motion? Motion and a second. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 27 is approved, 7-0. Item 28, an ordinance proposing an amendment to section 7.04 of the Home Rule Charter to include a requirement that the City of Omaha's master plan must address affordable housing development and sustainable development in addition to the elements that it already required to address.
The vote on number 28 is today. I don't see any lights. Is there a motion? Motion and a second. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 28 is approved, 7-0. Item 29, an ordinance proposing an amendment to section 8.02 of the Home Rule Charter to insert sexual orientation and gender identity as additional classifications which are entitled to equal protection under the Charter and for all action taken by the government of the City of Omaha. D is amendment of the whole requested by Councilmembers Harding and Melton.
The vote on number 29 is today. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
One of the reasons we proposed an amendment of the whole was to address, I think, or further the conversation from what probably did not happen at the Charter Convention. This amendment, which is important and I think should be acted on at some point, was brought up to the Charter Convention at the last meeting, basically at the 11th hour, with little discussion and as we'll probably hear from the law department, without really any input or ability or chance to vet how this might be worded. So part of the reason for the amendment of the whole was to address, I think, what would have been part of the conversation had there been the ability to do so. So, as I said, I think this is an important issue. It needs to be, it was approved by the Charter Convention, and I think we all agree that everything that came out of the Charter Convention deserves a chance to be voted on, or at least the ability for us as a body to give it that approval to go onto the ballot. But I think after numerous conversations with both colleagues and citizens and constituents and the law department, is that this really needs a little more investigation, a little more vetting, because the consequences of how it is written today without the amendment of the whole, and maybe even with the amendment of the whole, I think there's still numerous questions and concerns that the law department has as to what kind of ripple effects this would have through the rest of our codes and ordinances. So rather than moving the amendment of the whole, I think it's been a discussion and, what's that? Okay, well, I'm not making the motion, so I'm telling everyone what my intentions might be. My intention is that at this point, I'm probably not going to introduce or ask for a motion to approve the amendment of the whole. I want to hear further discussion from my colleagues too, but I think at the end of the day, it makes sense that, again, we don't lay this over. We don't withdraw it, because I think that might send a negative message, because I think we want to make sure that people understand it is our intent to advance this onto a ballot at some point. It just needs to have, I think, further discussion, further vetting, further input, more eyes on it so that the wording can be the correct wording, and that anything included in this charter amendment proposal does not have unintended consequences for any of our existing ordinances or codes that are in place.
Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Harding has said, and just as we discussed in the last one, the legislative committee's intention was to put the majority of the convention's requests onto ballots, but we have 3 ballots to put it on. So as opposed to withdrawing, I'm making a motion to place this on file so that this can be then considered for the spring or fall 2024 ballot at a later date. And then we don't need to, and I'll refrain from making any other comments about the amendment that I supported that Councilman Harding put forward that also included ethnicity and age and disability. And so I think that those are things that we probably need to further our discussion on. So with that, I'll make a move to place it on file for the purpose of advancing it to a future ballot.
Second. Motion and a second. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Point of clarification, when this is placed on file, would that also include the opportunity to change the wording of the current ordinance?
I may respond since it's my motion.
Oh, sure.
Oh, okay, all right, I just went. No, this has nothing to do with the ordinance. This is, all I'm doing is placing the charter amendment on file, which has the same legal consequences withdrawing it, but I think the message it's sending to the public by placing it on file says that we'll consider it, we may consider it again. So it's my intention with the placement on file, all this does is put it back with the other charter amendments that we're going to consider on a future ballot, because there were obviously 24 and we're not putting all of them on this ballot. Number one, for cost reasons, and number two, voter fatigue. So by placing it on file, I think we're sending the message, we're just tabling it for right now, and we can take it back up for the spring of 24. The ordinance is something different, it's already in place. The ordinance is there, and we can't change it unless a council member, you know, does a request to law and asks to change an ordinance, but the ordinance is completely separate than this charter amendment.
So the charter amendment, I'm asking for clarification because the way the charter amendment is currently written or suggested to be changed, I have some concerns about. So if we are tabling the discussion for a future day, would that also include changing some of the wording?
Yes. So right now, actually, what
That's the intent.
Okay.
That's, yeah,
we're,
absolutely.
we're going to table the whole, whether it's the original or our amendment. We're not even asking that our amendment be voted on. We're actually going to table the original, which then obviously tables the amendment as well.
Thank you for clarifying.
No, I thank you for asking and letting me answer.
Thank you. So I'm supportive of this measure as presented by the Charter Convention. I think the mayor is too, given comments provided at pre-council today. It is clear, however, that the language forwarded by the Charter Convention does need some work. For example, it does add sexual orientation and gender identity to our protected classes for non-discrimination, but it should also include things like religion and ethnicity and marital status and age and disability, which are already in our code, but then would not have been on the ballot in this respect. So I do agree with that. The amendment of the whole did address that issue, but it also addressed another issue that I was not supportive of. And as the only remaining author of the original non-discrimination ordinance we passed, that did add gender identity and sexual orientation for non-discrimination in the city. I think it's really important. Whatever we do does not impact that in a negative way. I think that was a very big step forward for our city about 10 years ago, and we need to make sure that stays in place. So having said that, I would likely support the motion to place on file for further work for that language. But I would also ask a similar question to Mr. Kuzi that I think Ms. Johnson just asked, which is, if we do that, and if there's additional work done on that particular section of language to make it consistent and I think achieve what the Charter Convention was asking us to do, it would not in any way negatively impact what's currently in our city code, which does have protections for gender identity and sexual orientation and non-discrimination in employment and housing and many other respects. That's an accurate statement, right?
Mackouzie Law Department, yes. If the council wishes to lay this over to be placed on a future ballot in 2024, that will give the council and the law department sufficient time to, one, craft the charter amendment at its optimum form, and also to work on any ordinances that might be affected so that those ordinances could be changed, modified, rewritten, whatever verb anybody wants to use, so that they aren't affected. It will allow, I guess, time, which we don't have exactly right now, to work on a charter amendment and meshing those with any of the ordinances that could be affected by that charter amendment.
Okay, thank you. Most likely for May of 2024 at this juncture, given the current time frame.
Mackouzie Law Department, yes.
And so to be clear, I would not favor or vote for anything that would negatively impact what we currently have on the books and those very important protections that I think we did already pass as a city. But I do appreciate the value of also adding them to our city charter, so I'm willing to continue to work on them as well. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. We had, I went back and had discussion with staff, and I know Councilmember Festerson was involved in this back several years ago when the council passed this. I think the mayor at the time was on the council and didn't support it. In looking at the charter committee, that 8 were appointed by the mayor and 7 won by each of us up here. It was a 14-0 vote with 1 abstaining, and the motion was made by to present this to us from someone the mayor appointed. And again, I think we all are grateful for the charter committee for the many weeks, as Councilman Palermo said, of the work they did to get this before us through the legislative committee and then to us on the council today. I know in looking at the lists of the folks that were on that did all the good work as public servants, I think there were at least 3 attorneys. So when I went back and read the transcript of the 7 or 8 pages of the motions that were made and how folks voted, I think the intent, what they wanted to do, it kind of got changed a little bit here in the amendment that was made by council members Melton and Harding. And I had good discussion with Brinker, as we always do. And I will support laying this over because I think it's important that we get it right. And I know that the amendment that was proposed here today, it does go further than I was comfortable with. That was the original intent of the 2013 or whatever it was a few years ago when they put that before, at that time that passed. So I will support holding this over until, I guess it would be the spring of 2024, is that correct? So we can work on getting it right, because again, this is nothing to criticize the charter convention members, the work they did. If people aren't comfortable with, maybe we got to get law involved to have more conversations so we do get it right. So then at such time we vote on it, then I think our voices will be clearly understood, and the things that we are concerned with, we can get addressed by then. So thank you.
Thank you. No further lights. Motion and a second. Roll call.
Bagley.
Aye.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Question?
Nope.
I think you might be violating the Meetings Act.
Item
think
30,
you're
a
wrong.
resolution.
And your actions could be declared.
You're wrong, Larry. Would you like to be escorted out again? I prefer not to have to do that again, but if you want to, if you're intent upon doing that every time, we'll accommodate you.
Thank you, thank you.
Item 30, a resolution to approve the public highway overpass agreement with Union Pacific Railroad Company for the reconstruction of an existing overpass structure.
Public hearing and vote on number 30 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Johnson abstains. Item 31, an ordinance to acquire private property for the 5B Street project, South 38th Street from Haskell Street to Grover Street.
Public hearing on number 31 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 32, an ordinance to acquire private property for the 145th and Grover Sanitary Sewer Relocation Project.
Public hearing on number 32 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 33, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of a purchase order to Solanus LLC in the estimated annual amount of $807,937.50 to purchase sludge dewatering liquid polymer to be utilized by the Papillion Creek Water Resource Recovery Facility. A's communication in opposition.
Public hearing on number 33 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 34, an ordinance to approve a streetscape maintenance agreement for the Little King Restaurant site at 8602 West Dodge Road.
Public hearing on number 34 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. I will say just quickly that this is in my district, and I do support this item. It does allow the applicant to spruce up what is the corner of basically 86th and Dodge, which could use some sprucing up. And in addition to that, this is the first of the new return of Little King to the metropolitan area, which I'm also excited about as a kid of the 70s and look forward to getting my next number 6. Next.
Item 35, an ordinance to approve a professional services agreement.
Oh, Mr. Harding, would you like to comment on your favorite sandwich?
Absolutely, it was a royal treat.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew you were a royal treat guy. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Oh, Mr. Rowe.
Yeah, I want to remind you that there is a Little King in Millard today. Has been there for many years.
A hidden treasure, huh? Thank you.
Item 35, an ordinance to approve a professional services agreement with WSP USA Inc. for the creation of the Vision Zero Action Plan at a cost of $345,896.68.
Public hearing on number 35 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, Jeff Subcheck, Public Works Vision Zero Coordinator.
Thank you. I think we'll probably have some questions for you about it. I'll ask for any other proponents at the moment. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. I'll ask you to come back up and just give us an overview and then see if council members have question about what is this item, which is the Vision Zero Action Plan. In particular, I think the interest is supporting the program, of course, but then wanting to know some specifics about this contract and the timeline and the goals and what you hope to succeed with Vision Zero in the short term.
Yeah, so the action plan is going to be a living document that's going to pretty much provide the roadmap for the city to be able to accomplish a long-term sustainable change of culture to more of a safety-focused culture to get us to our vision of zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries down the road. And we're looking at hopefully at the end of this long planning process to have a final document by the end of 2023.
And I'll have one follow-up question. I see there's some lights on now. So for those that want to see action sooner, and that would include me, and think this is important, I think as evidenced by the many fatalities we have had in Omaha recently, that involved pedestrians. I guess it's a two-part question. What can we be doing now to address that issue? And then secondly, does it really take another year and a half to have a plan? And then maybe thirdly, once there's a plan, what resources will be dedicated to it to actually implement it and make a difference?
I can start with your second question. It's been a long process just to get to where we're at right now. A lot of researching other cities and what is best practices for us to get to Vision Zero. And pretty much best practice is to go the route that we're going, to spend the amount of money that we're asking for here, to bring in professionals that have done this before, so we can do this right, like I said, for long-term success. I'm sorry, did that touch base for your second question?
Yeah.
And as far as the first question, that is something that is a great question that I've been asked before. Really, my suggestion would be for people to read up on Vision Zero, because there's a lot. Really, change starts with just the way we talk about Vision Zero and how we talk about traffic safety. And if you go to the Vision Zero Network website, you can really get a lot of good education on what Vision Zero is and safe systems process, and how to kind of start rethinking how we get from point A to point B. So once we do start getting through this action planning process and public participation and getting that public input to help strengthen the planning document, people will be more prepared to understand what their what our expectations are from the public, with just shared responsibility of the road and safe usage of it, while also putting a lot of pressure on those at the top that can make the most influence on how our roads are designed, and also policies that reflect safety first on our roads.
And would you say you're actively involved right now, not only with problem areas and troubleshooting, but design of future roadways as they're occurring?
Yeah, my job is just consistently trying to influence a lot of the decisions that we're making internally with more of a Vision Zero perspective. And that's an ongoing process, and especially with this action plan, when we bring in these consultants that will really solidify that kind of perspective and how we should be looking at our design concepts and what we hope to accomplish when we do redo a street or look for opportunities for safety improvements at any given intersection or road segment.
And at the end of the report, I presume there'll be some recommendations for implementation and things that probably will require resources. Do you anticipate, budgetary considerations to be part of what they'll recommend, and that what we should be then inserting in the next city budget?
Yeah, no doubt. They'll touch upon budget deficiencies that they might see. So they're pretty much going to take an audit of how we do things here and compare it to how other cities that are Vision Zero cities are using their budget, and see some strengths and weaknesses and opportunities for improvement for us in the long term. So what those recommendations are going to be, I can't speak to that right now, but that is something that we are asking them to do for us.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized. Or Ms. Johnson, are you first in the queue there?
Thank you. Obviously, this is going to be a huge impact to the city of Omaha, and all of our projects are measured primarily based upon how well we execute plans. And the amount of appreciation for any attributes that we make to the city for the betterment of it is primarily dependent upon how we communicate that to the citizens of Omaha. So with that being said, can you tell me how you will go about engaging the community about your efforts?
I can't speak to specifics because that's, again, what we're bringing in WSP to do. They have their own consultants that are experts in that area, and we're going to be having conversations with them for how to provide the best game plan to provide that public outreach and those opportunities for public engagement.
So would you say that public outreach would what we normally consider when we outreach the public traditionally here in Omaha, Nebraska? We traditionally reach out to community organizations from a top perspective rather than a grassroots perspective. Would you say that this will be the same concept that will be applied here?
What I can say is we're going to be very intentional with how we do this. We're not going to be looking at numbers as far as who we've reached. It's gonna really matter who we reach as opposed to how many. So we really want to be able to engage stakeholders that have diverse perspectives on a lot of different things. So business owners, just anyone that uses the bus system, anyone that walks, anyone that drives throughout the city. So we want to hear from everybody and get a good sampling of everybody so we can make the best decisions moving down the road.
So when you use the word stakeholders, from what I understand, stakeholders include nonprofits, business owners, doesn't include grassroots neighborhoods, things like that. So in a sense, you're saying that you're not going to reach down to neighborhoods who are going to be impacted by whatever we come up with.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that we are, like I said, we're going to be very intentional with reaching out to stakeholders that have a lot of sway and connection into communities. And I think, and this is just me speaking for myself and what I would hope how this transition, we can make those connections so they can help spread the word and bring our message of, hey, we've got this community meeting, we've got this opportunity for you to participate in this action planning process, and have these community leaders reach out to their community members, because I think there's a lot, we need to find a trust with the public, and I, just as historically not Omaha, but I know just government in general, people are always susceptible, or they're skeptical about anything that revolves any kind of action plan, because often they just go on shelves and collect dust, and that's something that we don't want to do. So we want to be very intentional with how we get that public feedback and try to get the most diverse opinions. And yeah, grassroots is something that, grassroots representation is going to be something that we're going to look for.
I have a little bit of a concern that when we're speaking to community organization where they don't have a obligation or any accountability to show how they go about reaching grassroots, that perhaps grassroots individuals won't have a say in this. So I would ask that you take that into consideration, that if we're going to just address community organization, that we put some level of measurements in their reporting that would indicate that they've actually done the work in terms of reaching grassroots individuals in the neighborhoods that will be largely impacted by whatever the outcomes might be. And lastly, I would ask that you, give 2-3 week notice about these community meetings rather than a 5-day window when we choose not to use snail mail to poor communities who may not have access to internet, Facebook, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a note for council members, my screen is not working correctly, but I believe I do have Mr. Bagley next in the queue. Is that right?
It is. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. President. Good afternoon. Just talking to constituents for the last year, I think this is a good step. There's a lot of things. I mean, I just think in my district, you got bike riders, you got scooters, you got roundabouts, zipper merging, that's a big topic. Are those things going forward that this will address, and was mentioned, the outreach to stakeholders and people that really want to know about this? Do you, if I'm hearing you right, you don't have a plan yet until we bring the consultant on board on how that'll look?
I wouldn't say we've, the intention, again, with bringing in the consultant was they've done this in other cities and they know the type of messaging and how to facilitate the conversations with the public, because this is a very touchy situation for a lot of people. Everyone is affected by traffic safety in some regards. Everyone's known someone that has been either hit by a vehicle and had catastrophic events or catastrophic health issues with that. So we have to be very sensitive to that because a lot of these conversations can be heated. So that's why we're bringing in the consultant to help us come up with the best possible way to reach the public and get their input as much as possible so it can be incorporated into this plan. So this plan reflects the voice of Omaha.
And if you can comment, what would that look like? So this consultant comes in, what would that community outreach look like? I mean, would there be town halls, or how would that look? How do you envision that?
Sure. So I can't speak to specifics, but I know in our RFP, we stated that we do want to have more of a hybrid, a very mixed bag, tool bag of how we're going to do this, because I don't think there's one way that just generic way that's going to work to get to everybody. So yeah, it's going to be a combination of digital outreach. It's going to be a lot of going to where people are, going to festivals, going to farmers markets, going to events in different parts of the city, and not making it so that we're putting the burden on the public to come to us to provide us the information that we want to hear. We want to go to them because we know that's where we're going to get the results.
That's what I was looking for, is those events we have all summer. You got Taste of Omaha, you got farmers markets, like you said. Those are great events. Just thinking of a couple, there's several. Even sporting events, Baxter Arena, CHI. The more visibility we can get from this, the better. I know you and I have talked in public works committees maybe once or twice, and there is frustration on, it doesn't seem like this is as visible as it should be. And I know you put a lot of work into this, and Mr. Fitzer and Stubbe, you guys have studied this, so we're trusting, at least I am, that this will be out of darkness, so to speak, and people will be able to see what this program is and the goals of it, instead of go click on a website and kind of surf through it. That it's a visibility for the community, I think, is essential for the mission and the goal of what you're going to do here. So I'll look forward to, I mean, if we can get updates if this goes forward, on where you're going to be and what you're going to do. I mean, you go to grade schools, you can go to high schools, go to the colleges. I mean, there's so many possibilities that I hope that I hear these people are everywhere getting this information out, because it's important for public safety. And the money that is before us here today for this consultant, which, as I've made clear before, I'm not the biggest fan of consultants, but in this case, if it helps you with what your goal is with this, which is public safety and reducing to zero fatalities and helping people understand all these things that deal with traffic and with construction going on in this city, it's not slowing down. So I will look forward to discussion in Public Works Committee in the weeks ahead and months ahead, that the progress that is made and how we're going to measure this. Thank you.
If I can speak to that,
Please.
That's another thing that's very important for us, and you'll see in a lot of, just about every action plan in any Vision Zero city, is just baking in accountability, and that being public accountability, and documenting progress and any kind of setback. So when there is any kind of setback, the public is aware of it, elected officials are aware of it, so questions can be asked, and we can work through problems that would explain why we're at this location when we should be right over here. And there's other things that are built in to help kind of push this thing along. We have an executive committee that has a lot of influence on being able to kind of help us usher progress. So that, again, there's a lot of intentional thought behind how we're going to be doing this and moving forward, and a lot of it is based off best practices from other cities.
Thank you. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Important, as you know, basically actually the stakeholders are everybody that uses a public street. So everyone is equally impacted by the work that you do in every area of our city. And then it also includes visitors who come to our city. So it is extremely important. And I've always worked with Keep Kids Alive, Drive 25, one of my favorite organizations, which would be a great contact, because obviously so many people have contacted them, and they've actually been the ones that, prior to Vision Zero, you know, the complaints I get with the speeding, and how do I change the mentality of my neighbors who are speeding through the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
Typically, they're not people from outside the neighborhood speeding in the middle of the neighborhoods. It's sometimes your neighbors. So they were a great resource in kind of just how do we change people's mentality about road safety to keep us safe? And I think that that's so important. And I do appreciate that the public outreach, it's not public outreach. I mean, it's phase 1 of public outreach, phase 2 of public outreach, phase 3 of public outreach. So multiple components to get the public outreach. But the end goal is going to be based on data, kind of scientific. It can't just be that, here's somebody's suggestions, but how do we keep people from speeding? How do we keep pedestrians safe, along with the scooters and the bikers and the cars? I mean, the drivers, how do we kind of change driving mentality? There's another ordinance number, and I'll just mention it right now, number 39, which it's the Nebraska Crime Commission gives the city a grant for the hotspots, because currently I feel like the only real thing that I have to offer my constituents for purposes of the speeding and the safety complaints that they have in the neighborhood, especially around schools and parks and kids playing in driveways, especially this time of the year, is hotspots. It's just enforcement. But the data has shown that enforcement alone is not going to solve the problems and not necessarily going to make neighborhoods and streets safer. So I think this comprehensive look at safety of our roads, all the way from walkers, bikers to cars and buses, is going to be so instrumental and important. So I appreciate the work. I do think this is rather specialized, which is why I would support a consultant that's done this in other cities and helped implement this and help you get a plan, a communication plan in place, to try and not just collect the data from people, but then present the findings. Because the end goal, our community is going to have to buy into this. The entire community is going to have to buy in. We're going to have to change our mindset in order to actually truly accomplish something. It's going to take every one of us, and because every one of us is a stakeholder in this one. So thank you for your work, and I do support this.
Thank you. No further lights. Next item.
Item 36, an ordinance to rescind ordinance number 41242 for the Zone 6 apartments at Exorbitant Village Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Agreement.
Public hearing on number 36 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon again, Bridget Hadley, City Planning. Just want to take a quick moment to just give a little bit about our process for canceling or rescinding TIF applications and projects, just so that there's clarity. Generally, TIF applications older than 9 months with little to no activity that's happened are candidates for cancellation or rescission. So it's kind of that window of time we're looking at. If there's been little activity or no activity at all, those are going to be candidates that will eventually be canceled or rescinded. About once a year, we try to purge our pipeline of TIF applications that do not make it through the entire approval process, which means going through to City Council, coming to you for final approval. We will proceed to cancel or rescind those applications accordingly. So some applications may only make it to, they may not even make it to the TIF committee. They only maybe make it to the planning board. The city staff can just submit a letter to say, you know, if there's been little activity or there's no indication that they're going to be able to move forward, then we can cancel it that way. Others, if they make it further, we'll have a formal process, which usually means a resolution or ordinance before you that cancels or rescinds the project. So those applicants, just to know, they can reapply. Occasionally, though, we will have TIF applications that complete the TIF approval process, but the project never materializes. Those projects can be and are often rescinded via request by the project owner or maybe by an action of the city staff. These projects are brought back to the City Council to be formally rescinded. Today we have 3 TIF projects, TIF redevelopment project plans, which were approved at different times in the past 5 years, and that's items 36 through 38. These projects are being rescinded either due to the project owner requesting to cancel the project, they're not going to be able to move forward, or at least some kind of indication to city staff that they're not going to move forward with the project. So with that, for item number 36, I am here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Item 37, an ordinance to rescind ordinance number 41465 for the Scott Tent Awning Company Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Agreement.
Public hearing on number 37 is today. Proponents, please.
Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Item 38, an ordinance to rescind ordinance number 42670 for the O'Keefe Lofts Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Loan Agreement.
Public hearing on number 38 is today. Proponents, please.
Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer any questions you may have.
Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Rowe, you're recognized.
Yeah, thanks. Bridget, I did have one question. So does the planning department put out an annual report, I believe you do, on the TIF projects that are ongoing, and then would these be included in that report?
Not on ongoing. So if they're anywhere in that approval process, there isn't a report that I prepare for those projects, no.
Okay.
Thank you. No further lights. Next item.
Item 39, an ordinance to amend the Nebraska Commission fiscal year 2022 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant to increase the award amount and extend the project period.
Public hearing on number 39 is today. Proponents, please.
Amber Parker, City of Omaha, Mayor's Office, 1819 Farnham, here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Item 40, an ordinance to approve and accept the U.S. Department of Justice Byrne Discretionary Community Grants Program in the amount of $527,000.
Public hearing on number 40 is today. Proponents, please.
Amber Parker, City of Omaha, Mayor's Office, 1819 Farnham Street, again here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Other proponents?
Good afternoon, Dr. Gayleen Armstrong, Director of the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice at the University of Nebraska, Omaha and Lincoln campuses. Thank you for your service. Here is a proponent of item number 40 and available for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 41, an ordinance to establish a Class B flammable liquids storage district number B-213 at 4002 South 149th Circle.
Public hearing on number 41 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 42, an ordinance to amend section 10-62 of the Omaha Municipal Code requiring the city comptroller to prepare an annual report on the status of bonds and make it available on the Finance Department's website.
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department.
Wait a
Sorry.
second, I got to call up the
I
item
just got so
first.
excited.
I know it's your first time, but public hearing on number 42 begins today. Proponents, please.
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. Here to answer any questions on this. This item originally came from, speaking of the Charter Convention, this item originally came from the Charter Convention. It was voted on, I believe, unanimously by the members to have a more detailed or accessible report on the bond situation that the city has from the Finance Department. The Legislative Committee determined that this issue could be better addressed by simply having an ordinance rather than a charter amendment change. So this ordinance was prepared by the Law Department or my friends in the Finance Department to accomplish what the Charter Convention wanted in this ordinance.
Thank you. And as we've discussed, I'm supportive of this too. One observation I'd have for you, I think Mr. Herrick still works in the Finance Department. He used to prepare a very simple chart for me and a very simple outline of the debt figures for me every year as we watched that very closely when our debt was getting concerning several years ago. I think that's what taxpayers are looking for, something that simple you can look at and tell and understand that's very difficult to find today. And I think that's your understanding too and what will be done here.
It is my understanding. We took a list. I worked with Mr. Curtis in the Finance Department and council staff and came up with what the Charter Convention members were looking for on behalf of the Finance Department. That information is available on their website. It's not, how should I put this, easily viewable. You'd have to scroll through a couple of audits and reports in order to locate it. This will put a more centralized location on the finance department's website, and I think it also contemplates having links to other documents to have all the information that they're looking for.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Non-action items, items 43 through 66 do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on agenda for consideration.
Second, roll call.
Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 3:30.